Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of In the Library of Graphic Literature. And if you're new here, I'm Luna, and welcome, Wallace!
Yay! And right here is Lila. Boo boo! She was attacking me. She was attacking me, honestly. Well, yeah, she has to be the softest cat I've ever petted.
And of course, my cats have to be all L's.
Yeah, that's why I like makes it easier, right?
Their names.
Lila, Loki,
Lupo,
and then Luna, all owned by Luna. I thought that was a kind of cool theme, right?
And today we have an episode on the greatest influencers in comics.
Yes, the
all-time.
top 10 or top 11 actually.
Yes.
Yeah, I added one at the top of it there, right? So shall we get along with it? Oh, first of all, number 11 is us, the show. Yay! Anyway, on to number 10. Number 10. Boo boo boo.
Here we have Blackhawk.
Yeah, and we're using some books to represent certain people. In this case, it's Jeanette Kahn, who was the publisher at the time this was put out, and she took over in '76 or something like that. She as an editor and then publisher and president. She ran DC during some of its top growth period and all that. So very, 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 very smart woman. And here I'll lay that to my side here. So and to me, definitely a big influencer in comics, because she showed the way that things were going, and I don't think we would have had Vertigo if it wasn't for having someone like her being that forward thinking on board. So
I would never have guessed.
yeah. So yeah. Now no. Before we take that one, before that, our number 9 is a tie, and it's a bunch of people. It's the Marvel writers of the 70s and the DC writers of the 80s.
Oh, you can't forget that.
The 70s ones were people like Don McGregor, Steve Englehart, Steve Gerber, Marv Wolfman, was it Jim Starlin, Len Wein, Doug Munch, and Bill Mantlo. They were all great, but the 80s or DC Vertigo ones were, of course, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, Garth Ennis, Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison, the whole British invasion, right? Mm-hmm. So I grouped those two together because they were just influential, really, as a group. Like the British invasion in music in the 60s, the British invasion of comics really did change it, and for the better, I think.
The British invasion. The British are coming. The British are
coming. And in the 70s, it was all the young hotheads who had come in and taken over Marvel, and they were writing some really good stuff. All of it was really good, and so I figured the writers of those two periods from those two companies, they're definitely influential, right?
Oh, of course.
Now our number 8, and I've picked this as just a sample of who we're talking about. We're talking about Stan Lee. He wrote some of these, I guess, or dialogue some of these. And I know a lot of people.
The Amazing Adult Fantasy.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite omnibuses. I bought this one in New York, actually.
Ever since the dawn of time, nothing can match the terror of Timbuba.
So, now, okay, maybe he wasn't the greatest wordsmith. No, he wasn't a bad wordsmith, but Stan Lee, I think I pick him as an influencer, because there are people out there right now who are saying either kill him or he's right on or whatever, because some people have nothing better to do than argue about stuff. But Stan Lee, whether you liked him or hated him or whatever, he definitely was a big time influencer, because during the
I must retrieve
we got to get the cat. During the 60s and 70s, he was possibly the biggest promoter of comics out there. Oh no, it's a giant cat coming onto the set. But yeah, so like I say, despite whatever you may think of Stan, he promoted the crap out of comics, and he became like Mr. Comics, especially when they were doing all the Marvel Cinematic Universes, and he was appearing in all of them and all that. It's just like it was a great gimmick anyway, and sometimes you got to get gimmicks to get people's attention. Okay, our next one, our number 7 is, and this is an example of one of his works. This was James Warren, Airy magazine. He did Airy magazine and Creepy magazine, Vampirella, and started during the 60s. And
I've heard of Vampirella.
yeah, and lasted into the 70s. Now the great thing about this was because they were magazines, they weren't subject to the Comics Code Authority, so they could do whatever they wanted, really, right? And so for the few years in between the Comics Code, when you weren't allowed to sneeze without someone getting upset, and society going to hell, these I think the Warren comics really were like a lifeboat for the comic book art form in North America during the 60s and 70s, until, which is our next one, until these two came along.
Dun, 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 dun.
Now this was in 77. I can't remember what that. I think the other one's 76, is it? Let's see this one.
I love when we have single issue comics.
Oh yeah, I mean, and this was one. Let's see. Oh, this is 76, so this is actually earlier. So I'll do them in this order. In terms of big time influencers, there's a tie, and they're both magazines. 76 for American Splendor. This was Harvey P. Carr. I showed you him being interviewed on Letterman and all that. And Letterman, he used to drive Letterman nuts.
Mm-hmm.
He'd say all. It's like he was trying to get kicked off, right? Is the kitty cat? Is she going to behave?
I don't know.
Anyway, these are great comics because they're just about everyday life. This is what I like about those, right? And they very influential on, other basically what they call the neo-realists, people who do autobiographical comics, like myself. So Harvey B. Carr, he ruled. And of course then was Heavy Metal. This tied for that number. And Heavy Metal, this came out in 77, and myself and Jerry, we went nuts for it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like comics like we'd never seen. I mean, there was nudity, there was Mobius. Oh, look, here, now look at this.
I love that.
It is something else. And I mean, as kids, we were like 16 years old when we seen this. It was just like, wow, this is not like any comics we seen, right? Mm-hmm. There's nudity throughout it, or not throughout it. Well, on the cover at least. But yeah, they could have anything, and we were like, oh my god, this comics have become art.
I noticed you have a Neil Gaiman.
I have a Neil Gaiman one there, but not for him because he's already been covered in our 80s, 90s Vertigo thing. Mm-hmm. But this was I had for Karen Berger. Oh, he's run away again. I think we're going to have to expel her from the. Come on. We're going to have to expel her from the studio. So yes, our number 5, as the kitten is let out the door. Our number 5 is actually the editor Karen Berger, who basically, ran Vertigo Comics, was the editor-in-chief.
Might as well show you the book we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, she did it all. She made Vertigo a great brand. That's why when DC dropped it there a few years ago, myself and a lot of people were like, what, are they insane? Vertigo is just a cool title, and it has such good association because everyone liked anything Vertigo related, right?
Show them that.
It is, isn't it? I mean, great comics. This is, of course, the Books of Magic.
And probably where, J.K. Rowling got all of her ideas.
Yeah, they hate it when you talk about this, right? But he does predate, right? But it was a great series. I can remember at the time reading this series. What was actually a great series too. It was just like, woo, whoever this gaming guy is, he's good, right?
Yes.
Now next is Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, the creators of Superman. Yay! Now, of course, they were influential just because they more or less invented the superhero, the modern superhero in a lot of ways. They gave Superman his trunks. He had these weird powers. He could fly. Because you think back then, even in books and all that, I mean, you had Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Dracula and certain characters, but you didn't have someone like a superhero, right? With a fancy costume and a secret identity, and so I mean they really did. I mean they created a whole art form, a whole genre, right? The superhero, right? So there's for those who, and I still like some of the superhero comics. I still read them, right? I touch base with them Now, the next one was a three-way tie between...
Ooh, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, the guy who drew this cover, and who, remember we had that Captain America one in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
That was by the same guy, Steranko. Now he to me, I have him very high up on it. No, I'm not sure if that's Steranko there, but I have him very high up on the scale because of his.
That's cool.
Oh yeah. I think it was only the first one or two in that issue though is actually Steranko, because he or was it? Well, geez, no, okay, I should have got one of the other. Well, anyway, the cover, and a lot of the other covers were all done by him. But with him, it was his.
So who does do the artwork in this one?
A lot of it was Frank Springer, Jim Trimp. Oh no, there is a number 5. So there was one in here. Yeah, this one.
Okay, show the people.
Da-da-da-da. And the great thing about Steranko was he had a very cinematic style of comic. I mean, even like that of storytelling. I mean, that sets it all, even with just doing the title. And of course, he mixes in the credits in with the title there, Stan Leela, and illustrated by Jim Steranko. But Steranko, he was he had a really cinematic style of comic book storytelling, and I think it rubbed off well, definitely on me and a whole generation. And Frank Miller, who he's tied with, I think was definitely influenced by him, because he was also very cinematic, and tied with them. It's a three-way tie.
And of course we have Batman, who could not forget
Yeah.
the most influential.
Well,
Batman.
Well, no, this is part of the number 3. This Neil Adams, more the artist than the. And Batman's very influential now. Actually, yeah, really in a lot of ways, right? But this artist, he could do like really fancy panel designs and all that, and he had a great realistic style, but he could do fancy panels without sort of you losing your mind and getting confused and not knowing what's on the go, right? So Adams, one of the, I mean, he did stuff for DC and Marvel. His X-Men was unreal, right? But this guy could tell a story, and you wouldn't get lost at all. And he was a fast artist. He was a nice guy too. I met him a couple of times in New York, at the Comic Cons down there. And
oh, you lucky duck!
I tell you, it's funny because some people didn't like to get critiques, portfolio critiques done by him, because they'd bring in their artwork all proud and thinking it's the greatest thing in the world, and without being mean at all, he would tell them what was wrong with their thing and how they could fix it. So to me, I even listened to him, I said, oh, he's doing you guys a favor. And some of them took it good, you could tell. Some just slunk away and just never emerged to see the light of day again, right?
So what do we have next?
Next, of course, our number 2 on the list of
When Gods
influencers.
Walk the Earth, the Eternals.
And by Jack Kirby, of course, the king of comics. This is one of my favorites from the 70s, actually. Because he'd gone from Marvel to DC and then came back to Marvel in the mid-70s or mid to late 70s. And he did this series, The Eternals. I do prefer the comic much better than the movie. The movie was just like, I mean, it wasn't half bad, but it was just like, oh, it could have been so much cooler. I mean, this thing had space gods, it had, oh, look, I mean, look at that.
Oh, yes.
There's Zeus, right? But I mean, always great costumes too. Oh, and there's the gods, right? That came to the Celestials, as they call them, an alien race that came to basically pass judgment on Earth, and if we pass, then would be allowed to exist. And if we fail, then they'd burn the planet to the bone, I guess, right? But it was a kind of fun series, and Kirby himself, of course, he's influential because, I mean, geez, he created so much stuff from, Fantastic Four, Hulk, X-Men, Avengers, the list goes on, Thor, everything. This, but yeah, and very influential to everyone in comics. I mean, there are things he draws, like his little energy, like in the background there, and all that.
I love that.
They call that the when you see that energy stuff happening. It's called the Kirby crackle. They call it.
Mm-hmm.
And geez, where is it? It's funny, I can't. Oh no, like in the background there, the energy, right? Or there, see that?
Mm.
So Kirby crackle. So for that alone, he should be on our list. Now a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, geez, how can he just be number 2? Who could be number 1? Is it God himself?" Well, kind of close by. It is Will Eisner. Now a lot of people, like I say, are going to be very upset that Jack or Stan or whoever isn't top of the list. But
The Contract with God.
yeah,
Is that what it is?
yeah.
Trilogy.
A Contract with God there's actually 3 graphic novels in one. A Contract with God by itself is was a great little graphic novel with a bunch of little short stories in it.
Oh, fancy. Sure.
Yeah. And very obviously some of it autobiographical, but great little stories.
When did it come out?
This would have been 78, I think it was 77, 78. So I mean, and at the time, I mean, he was already a legend at the time because he'd done The Spirit in the 40s and the 50s that appeared in newspapers down the States. It was very influential. Now he worked for the U.S. Army doing the Army comics until the early 70s, I think, was when he retired. And I think it was then he began to work on graphic novels because he was in retirement, and he wrote all his graphic novels as a retired person, right? And they were all great. And I mean, it was the reason that people talk about this being like, oh, this is the first graphic novel. It's not really, but it was the first one like marketed, and I can even remember on the original cover, a new graphic novel collection by Wallace. But anyway, he was one, and not only that, but and I'd seen like film clips of him talking about comics, and he always talked about how, and you could tell by his work, and Steranko, a lot of these other guys were all influenced by him because of his storytelling techniques that he developed, and he knew back even in the 40s that he was working on something that was an art form, not just light entertainment for the masses, right? Mm-hmm. So Will Eisner, without a doubt, my number 1 choice of all-time influencers there. And they even named the biggest award in comics, the Academy Award of Comics, as I call it, the Eisners after him. So I mean, that's pretty cool, right? I tried to get into a class of his when I was living in New York in the 80s, but it was very hard to get into it because it always filled up. Mm-hmm. But when I was there, they had an exhibit of his work on. I went in, I had to look at it, and then a week or so later, they had to close the exhibit because someone came in and robbed like a lot of the artwork. Fortunately, some of the artwork pages that was just up, they were just copies of artwork. So, and I did have, and I don't know, I think I still do have the poster from that exhibit somewhere. In photographs of the studio at the time, you'll see it in the background on the wall, right? So, Eisner, oh, I love him. Purr. Anyway,
So yeah, I figured I'll let you guys know that I also have a channel now too.
Oh yes.
Silicate. I'll link it down in the description. Well, he will.
Okay. Yes. You'll send me that. Yeah, and check it out. You have. What would you say is the?
It's just gonna be me.
Just you.
Myself.
Yeah. Okay.
My nonsense.
You're interested in nonsense?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Well, it will be highly entertaining that night. You can be guaranteed, right? Well, we share a lot of interests, in terms of toys. I guess, toys, comics, some cartoons too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a number of things.
Yeah, and who shouldn't like toys? I can remember when you talking about people of a certain age playing with toys. She's like, well, you should be 80 years old and be able to play with a toy, right?
He called me a collector, but it's like, no, I'm more of a toy enthusiast.
Yeah. Well, or a toy lover, I like to think, right?
Sounds weird.
I guess so, yeah. Now that you say that.
Well, that's all, folks.
Oh, there's a snowstorm outside even as we're recording this too.
Yes, hopefully we don't lose power.
So we got there. And I guess we're not going to, of course, as usual, we're not going to tell them what next week's episode is. And check out the book of the week, which you've been producing for me. I'm going to be posting, two or three? Book of the day, sorry.
Yes.
I'll post 2 or 3 of them a week, something like that, I guess.
Something like that.
And
Stay tuned.
it'll be whatever book I'm reading that day, which, knowing my big reading sack, is a lot.
Alright, let's go.
Okay, thanks for having us over. Bye.